The Ark of Return hovered 100 meters above the Arctic ice, its massive hull blocking out the sun. Military helicopters circled at a distance, their commanders unsure how to respond. Nobody had expected the buried ship to simply fly away. Inside the command center, Jae-sung worked calmly while chaos erupted around the world. News networks broadcast footage of the 12 Ark ships. Social media exploded with speculation. Governments issued emergency statements. Religious leaders debated what this meant for humanity's understanding of itself. "We're receiving communication requests from every nation on Earth," Yuna reported, looking overwhelmed by the flood of incoming messages. "Answer them all at once," Jae-sung decided. "Broadcast on every frequency. Let everyone hear the same message simultaneously." He stood before the ship's communication array, looking calm despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. Mirai stood beside him, ready to provide technical details if needed. Jiwon and her team watched, knowing they were witnessing a pivotal moment in human history. "People of Earth," Jae-sung began, his words translating automatically into hundreds of languages through the Ark's advanced systems. "My name is Captain Jae-sung Ko. 12,000 years ago, I left a dying Earth aboard this vessel. Today I return to find humanity has rebuilt itself from nothing. I return with a message of hope and reunion." He explained everything. The solar crisis that had threatened Earth millennia ago, the Ark ships that carried humanity to the stars, the 40 colony worlds that still existed throughout the galaxy, the mission to return and reconnect the scattered branches of humanity. "You are not alone," Jae-sung said. "Humans live on 40 worlds across 20 light-years of space. Some colonies developed faster than light travel centuries ago. Others are just now reaching their own space age. You are part of a vast family that has been waiting for Earth to redevelop." Mirai added scientific context, explaining the technology they possessed and offering to share it freely. Medical advances that could cure diseases, energy systems that didn't harm the environment, agricultural techniques that could feed billions. All of it given without conditions. "We don't want to rule you," Mirai emphasized. "We're not conquerors or gods. We're your ancestors, returning to help our descendants claim their place in the galaxy." The broadcast continued for hours. Other Ark captains joined, each telling their stories of the long sleep and their joy at finding Earth recovered. They showed images of the human colonies on distant worlds, cities built on planets with purple skies, space stations orbiting binary stars. Humans adapted to a dozen different environments but still recognizably human. In the days that followed, the world's response was mixed. Some nations welcomed the Ark ships with open arms. Others remained suspicious. Some religious groups declared it a miracle, while others called it heresy. But gradually, curiosity won over fear. Taejun, it turned out, worked for a secret international organization that had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Groups around the world had suspected that advanced civilizations might have existed in Earth's past. They had been waiting for proof. "We wanted to control the situation," Taejun admitted to Jiwon. "Keep the discovery secret until we understood it. But I'm glad you moved quickly. If we'd waited, if we'd tried to hide this, it would have been worse." Daeho, ever the protector, organized security for the first meetings between Ark crews and modern humans. Thousands of people wanted to visit the ships, to meet the ancients, to see the technology that had preserved them across millennia. Jiwon's team became unexpected ambassadors, translating not just language but culture between old and new humanity. Yoonji worked with Ark engineers, learning systems that seemed like magic. Minho studied the genetic libraries, understanding how life had been preserved. Heejin cataloged the biological samples, finding species that modern science had never known existed. Yuna established communication protocols with the distant colonies, using the Ark ship's faster-than-light communication technology. Humanity began talking to itself across the stars for the first time in 12,000 years. The message sent to the colonies was simple. Earth is alive. Earth is awake. Earth remembers. Responses came back over weeks and months. Some colonies had forgotten about Earth entirely, building new mythologies about their origins. Others had kept the knowledge alive through oral traditions and waited generations for this day. A few had developed beyond the Ark civilization, creating technologies even Jae-sung and Mirai didn't understand. But all of them wanted to reconnect, to be part of humanity again. Jae-sung shared something he called the human protocol during a global address. When we first went to space, we met other intelligent species. Some were older than us. Some had technology that made ours look primitive. But we noticed something. They were rigid, unchanging. They had reached a plateau and stopped growing. Mireille continued his thought. Humans are different. We adapt, we improvise. We face extinction and refuse to die. Other species saw problems as walls. Humans saw them as challenges to overcome. That's why humanity spread farther and faster than species that had thousands of years head start. The HFY message resonated through modern civilization. It wasn't about humans being violent or aggressive. It was about resilience, creativity, and the refusal to accept limitations. When faced with a dying sun, humanity hadn't given up. They had built ships and fled to the stars. When those colonies faced hardships, they adapted instead of failing. And when Earth's descendants lost everything and had to start over, they did it. They rebuilt civilization from stone tools to space stations in just a few thousand years. Other species planned in generations, Jae-sung explained to a gathering of world leaders. Humans plan in millennia. We play the longest game possible. My crew went to sleep 12,000 years ago with a plan that we knew wouldn't complete until we were ancient history. That's the human advantage. We think beyond ourselves. The genetic libraries were open to all nations equally. The ARC ships shared their databases of human knowledge from the ancient advanced age. But they also learned from modern humanity, studying how different solutions had been developed in isolation. One discovery particularly amazed the ARC crews. Modern humans had developed quantum computing using different principles than the ancient civilization. The approach was actually more elegant in some ways, more efficient. You proved something important, Mireille told Ji-won during a quiet conversation months after the awakening. When we went to sleep, we worried that without the archives, humanity would be lost forever. But you showed that human ingenuity doesn't need instruction. You rebuilt everything we had and added new ideas we never considered. Ji-won smiled. We had good teachers. You left us your curiosity and our genes, the drive to explore and discover. That was the real inheritance. The first expedition to contact the distant colonies launched 2 years after the Arcs awoke. It was a joint mission, combining ancient Arc technology with modern innovations. The crew included both Arc survivors and modern humans, symbolizing the reunification of humanity. Captain Jae-sung Ko chose to remain on Earth. I've been traveling for 15,000 years if you count the time dilation, he said. I think I'll stay home now. Help rebuild what was lost and create what's new. Mireille joined the expedition, her scientific curiosity demanding she see what the colonies had become. Minho went with her, unable to resist the chance to explore 40 new worlds. Yoonji stayed on Earth, working with Arc engineers to build new ships. Daeho became head of security for the International Arc Preservation Project. Hyejin established the first interstellar biological research institute. Salman trained others in the medical techniques preserved from ancient humanity. Yuna became the chief translator for the Human Reconnection Initiative, facilitating communication between Earth and the colonies as relationships developed. Taejun's organization transformed from a secret watchdog group into an open diplomatic corps. And Ji-won returned to research, but now she studied the history of human expansion across the galaxy. She wrote books about the incredible journey humanity had taken, from a dying Earth, to the stars, back to Earth, and out to the stars again. 30 years after the discovery, Ji-won stood in her office at Seoul University, looking at a picture on her wall. It showed the Arc of Return emerging from the Arctic ice backlit by the northern sun. Her granddaughter, Haeun, stood beside her. Tell me the story again, grandmother, Haeun asked, though she had heard it dozens of times. Ji-won smiled. We thought we were alone. We thought humanity began in caves and struggled slowly toward civilization. But we were wrong. We came from the stars, forgot our origins, and climbed back to space through pure determination. And now we're returning to the galaxy. But this time we're not fleeing. We're exploring. We're reconnecting with our cousins on 40 worlds. We're becoming who we always were meant to be. Han looked at the photo of the Arc ship. I'm going to be part of the next expedition. I applied to the program. Ji-won wasn't surprised. The drive to explore was genetic, after all, passed down through 12,000 years and countless generations. The same spirit that had built the Arcs lived in modern humans. The cryogenic chamber was cold despite the ship's active environmental systems. Frost covered the pods, but the one containing Captain Jae-sung Ko was already warming. Condensation rolled down its transparent surface as internal heating brought the occupant's body temperature slowly back to normal. Somin worked quickly to set up monitoring equipment. Her hands shook as she attached sensors to measure the ancient human's vital signs. Hyejin stood ready with emergency medical supplies, though nobody knew if modern medicine would even work on someone who had been frozen for 12 millennia. Heart rate detected, Somin announced. It's slow but strengthening. Brain activity is increasing. I think he's going to wake up on his own. Ji-won stood near the pod, her mind struggling to process what was about to happen. She was going to meet someone who had lived in Earth's forgotten advanced age, someone who had traveled to other star systems and seen things humanity hadn't even imagined yet. The pod's lid opened with a soft hiss. Warm air mixed with the cold chamber atmosphere, creating fog that obscured the interior. Then a hand emerged, gripping the pod's edge. A man pulled himself up slowly, his movements weak but determined. Captain Jae-sung Ko looked surprisingly normal. He was middle-aged, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform that had survived the long sleep perfectly. When he opened his eyes, they were alert and intelligent despite his obvious disorientation. He spoke, and his words were in ancient Korean. The pronunciation was different, the grammar archaic, but Yuna could understand him. System status? Jae-sung asked, his voice rough from disuse. Why emergency wake sequence? Yuna responded in her best approximation of the ancient dialect. Captain Ko, please remain calm. You have been asleep longer than planned. Much longer. Jae-sung looked around the chamber, taking in the modern equipment and the strangers surrounding his pod. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding. As a starship captain, he was trained to assess situations quickly. How long? He asked simply. 12,000 years, Yuna answered. Jae-sung closed his eyes for a moment, processing this information. When he opened them again, there was deep sadness there. Everyone he had known, everyone from his time was gone. The world he remembered had vanished into history. The mission? He asked. You succeeded, Ji-won said, and Yuna translated. Humanity survived. We're here. We rebuilt civilization. Jae-sung looked at each person in the room carefully, studying them like a scientist examining a new species. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. You rebuilt more than survived, he said, switching to a modern Korean dialect with surprising ease. Your technology woke my ship. Your curiosity brought you here. Good. That's the human spirit I remember. Over the next hour, Jae-sung's body recovered from the long sleep with remarkable speed. The ship's medical systems had done their job well. As he regained strength, the team explained what they had discovered and what was happening in the world above. You woke all the ARC ships, Jae-sung said, shaking his head. The protocol was designed to prevent this. If one ARC woke in a hostile situation, the others would stay hidden. What's happening isn't hostile, Daeho argued. It's just chaotic. Chaos can become hostile very quickly, Jae-sung replied, especially when nations fight over technology they don't understand. He requested that Mirai-song be woken. I need my science officer. She'll understand the modern world better than I will. Mirai always had a gift for adaptation. Dr. Mirai-song's revival went smoothly. She was younger than Jae-sung, and her recovery was even quicker. When Yuna explained their situation, Mirai immediately began asking questions about modern technology, society, and politics. Her mind worked rapidly, connecting pieces of information together. Show me what you've accomplished, Mirai requested. Show me how you rebuilt. They brought her to the command center and connected her to the internet through a satellite link. Watching Mirai discover modern human civilization was fascinating. She absorbed information at an incredible rate, reading through history, science, and technology databases while asking clarifying questions. Remarkable, she said after an hour of intense research. You did it without the archives, without the genetic libraries. You started from almost nothing and rebuilt to near spaceflight capability in just a few thousand years. Near spaceflight? Minyo asked, slightly offended. We've been to the moon. We have satellites. We have space stations, Mirai smiled gently. I meant no disrespect. By near, I mean you're on the edge of becoming a true spacefaring civilization again. Another century or two, and you would have rediscovered most of what we knew. Jae-sung studied the global map showing the 12 ARC locations. Military forces were converging on several sites. The situation was becoming tense. "The other Arcs are waking their captains now," he said. "We need to contact them before your governments start fighting over our ships." He moved to the communication console with practiced ease, as if 12,000 years of sleep meant nothing. His fingers moved across controls that responded to his touch, activating systems the modern team hadn't been able to access. "This is Captain Jae-Sung Ko of the Ark of Return, speaking to all Ark captains on emergency channel," he broadcasted. "Do not engage with local forces. Do not activate weapon systems. Our mission has not changed. We are here to help humanity, not frighten them." One by one, responses came back. Other captains, other crew members who had survived the long sleep. They confirmed receipt of orders and agreed to hold position, while Jae-Sung determined the best course of action. "What was your mission?" Ji-won asked. "Really? You didn't just preserve life and knowledge. You came back for a reason." Jae-Sung and Mirai exchanged glances, then Mirai spoke. "Our mission was to reunite humanity. When we left Earth, we spread across 40 star systems. We established colonies, terraformed worlds, built new civilizations. But we were scattered, divided." She pulled up star charts on the display. Dots marked human colony worlds throughout a section of the galaxy. 40 dots. 40 human civilizations, all descended from the original Ark missions. Some colonies thrived, Mirai continued. Others struggled. Some developed in isolation and forgot they came from Earth. We were losing our sense of being one species. The Ark of Return and the other return arcs had a simple mission, Jae-Sung added. Come back to Earth, reconnect with whatever humanity had become here, and then serve as a bridge. Reunite the scattered colonies into a single cooperative civilization. But we arrived during an ice age and found you had started over from scratch, Mirai said. So we decided to wait until you were ready. Until you had developed enough to handle the truth without it destroying your societies. Are we ready now? Eunji asked. Jae-Sung looked around at the team. Ji-won, who had pursued mystery despite danger. Minho, whose curiosity drove him to explore. Eunji, who solved problems with creativity. Yuna, who built bridges between different ways of thinking. Daeho, who protected others. Hyejin and Somin, who approached the unknown with both caution and wonder. Yes, Jae-Sung said firmly. You're ready. You proved it by waking us. You didn't run in fear. You didn't attack. You tried to understand. Alarm suddenly blared. Taejun's voice came over the radio, strained with urgency. Military forces have arrived. Multiple helicopters landing around the site. They're demanding access to the ship. I can't hold them off anymore. Daeho moved toward the exit, ready to defend the position. But Jae-Sung raised his hand. No need for defense, the ancient captain said. He moved to the ship's main control panel and pressed several controls. If humanity is ready to know the truth, then let's show them everything. The ice around the ship began to melt. Not from heat, but from some kind of molecular vibration that turned solid ice directly into harmless vapor. Within minutes, the ship was free from its frozen prison. Then, impossibly, the Ark of Return began to rise, emerging from the ice sheet like a leviathan surfacing from the deep. Its massive hull reflected the Arctic sun, visible for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Around the world, 11 other Ark ships did the same. Rising from the ocean floor, breaking free from Antarctic ice, emerging from desert sands and jungle soil. 12 massive vessels, each a testament to humanity's lost age of greatness, all revealing themselves simultaneously. The message was clear. Humanity's past had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. Ji-won descended through the ice tunnel, her mind racing with questions. Behind her came Yuna Shin, a linguist and cryptographer who had arrived just hours before. Yuna specialized in ancient languages and mathematical codes, and right now they desperately needed her skills. When they reached the ship's interior, Ji-won was struck by how clean everything looked. 12,000 years of perfect preservation. The bioluminescent lighting brightened as they walked, making the corridors feel almost welcoming. Minho met them at the cargo hold entrance. We found the computer core, or what we think is the computer core. It's in the command center near the front of the ship. They moved through the vessel quickly, following the main corridor forward. The command center was circular, with seats arranged around a central pillar. The pillar was covered in displays that activated when they entered, showing symbols and diagrams that meant nothing to them. Yuna approached the main console carefully. She carried a tablet loaded with every mathematical constant and universal symbol system known to humanity. If this is truly an advanced civilization, they would understand mathematical language. Math is universal. She began inputting prime number sequences onto the console. At first, nothing happened. Then the displays flickered and new symbols appeared, symbols that matched her input pattern. "It's responding," Yuna breathed. "It understands mathematical communication." For the next 2 hours, Yuna worked to establish a basic interface. She used geometry, physics constants, and simple arithmetic to create a translation matrix. The ship's computer was incredibly sophisticated. It learned from her inputs, adapting its responses to match her communication style. Finally, text began appearing on the screens. First in mathematical notation, then slowly transforming into readable Korean characters. "Ancient Korean, but readable. Ship's log access granted," Yuna read aloud. "Beginning data transfer." Information flooded the displays. Ji-won recorded everything with her camera while Yuna worked to translate. The story that emerged was both incredible and terrifying. The ship's name was the Ark of Return. It had been built in the 47th century, Earth's calendar. But not the 47th century they knew. A different timeline. A different Earth. "This doesn't make sense," Minho said, reading over Yuna's shoulder. 47th century? "That's impossibly far in the future." "Not the future," Yuna corrected. "The past. Their 47th century was our 47th century BC. About 6,500 years ago by our current calendar." She pulled up the crew manifest. 47 names. All human. All with Korean and East Asian surnames. Park, Kim, Choi, Lee. Common names but written in an ancient style. The mission logs told an incredible story. Earth 12,000 years ago had been dying. The sun's activity had become unstable, causing massive climate shifts. Radiation levels were rising. The planet was becoming uninhabitable. But humanity at that time wasn't primitive. They were advanced. They had developed spaceflight, genetic engineering, and technologies that seemed like magic. They had explored nearby star systems and found habitable worlds. When they realized Earth was dying, they made a choice. They would save their species and as much of Earth's life as possible. They built massive ark ships, each carrying thousands of people, genetic samples of every species, and all of humanity's accumulated knowledge. The arks launched in waves, heading to different star systems. Their mission was to establish colonies, terraform new worlds, and preserve human civilization. "So we're descendants of these colonists?" Yoonji asked. "Humans from the future who fled to the past?" "Not exactly," Yuna said, scrolling through more logs. The Ark of Return wasn't fleeing. It was returning. She pulled up the ship's mission parameters. The Ark of Return had left Earth 3,000 years before it buried itself in the ice. It had traveled to multiple star systems, helping establish colonies and terraform planets. Its mission was to return to Earth after the solar crisis had passed to see if the homeworld had recovered. "They came back," Ji-won whispered. "After 3,000 years traveling through space, they came home. But when they arrived, they found Earth had changed dramatically. The solar crisis had ended, but an ice age had begun. The planet was frozen, and more importantly, there were humans here, primitive humans living in small tribes. The captain's log entries showed confusion and wonder. Where had these humans come from? The Ark crews had taken all of humanity with them into space. How could people be living on Earth? Then the realization hit the ancient crew: time dilation. While they had experienced 3,000 years of travel, much more time had passed on Earth. The colonies they had helped establish had grown, developed faster than light travel, and sent their own missions back to Earth. Those colonists had arrived thousands of years before the Ark of Return completed its slower journey home. Modern humans, the primitive tribes living on Ice Age Earth, were descendants of the future colonies. They had forgotten their origins, lost their technology, and started over. They had become the humans of the Stone Age. "This is incredible," Yejin said over the radio from the station. "It means humanity originated twice, once as an advanced civilization that left Earth, and again as their descendants who returned and forgot everything." The captain of the Ark of Return, a man named Jae-sung Ko, had made a difficult choice. The ship couldn't help the primitive humans without disrupting their natural development. So he decided to wait. He ordered the ship buried in ice. set up the preservation systems, and put the crew into cryogenic sleep. The plan was to wake up periodically, check on humanity's progress, and reveal themselves when civilization was ready. The log showed several wake-up cycles over the millennia. Each time, the crew checked on human development and decided to sleep longer. The last wake-up cycle had been 2,000 years ago. The crew had looked at human civilization, seen empires rising and falling, and decided humanity still wasn't ready. They went back to sleep, intending to wake up again in another 2,000 years. That means they should wake up in our time, Minho realized. Soon, Yuna navigated to the cryogenic system status. 2 pods showed active life signs. 2 crew members had survived 12,000 years of frozen sleep. Captain Jae-Sung Ko and Dr. Mireille Song, the chief science officer. They're alive, Jiwon said, her voice shaking. 2 people from Earth's ancient advanced civilization are alive right now, sleeping just a few rooms away from us. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared through the ship. Red lights flashed along the corridors. Text appeared on every display in the command center, and this time it was in modern Korean. Warning: multiple similar vessels detecting activity. Automated wake sequences initiating. 12 ARC ships responding to verification signal. Yuna frantically worked the controls. What verification signal? We didn't send anything. The ship did, Yunji said, pointing to a communication log. When we activated the computer core, it automatically sent a ping to other ARC ships buried around the world. It's a safety protocol. If one ARC wakes up, they all wake up. On the main display, a map of Earth appeared. 12 locations glowed red: Antarctica, Siberia, the Atlantic Ocean floor, the Amazon basin. Each location marked an ARC ship beginning its wake-up sequence. The Chinese government has submarines near the Antarctic site, Taejun reported over the radio. He sounded panicked. The Americans are mobilizing forces to the Atlantic location. Every major power is moving to secure the nearest ARC ship. This is going to start a war. Jiwon looked at the cryopod status display. Captain Jae-Sung Ko's pod was already beginning its warming cycle in response to the ship-wide alert. They had maybe an hour before he woke up. An hour before someone from humanity's lost past opened their eyes and saw what their descendants had become. An hour before the world learned that everything they knew about human history was wrong. We need to wake him properly, Soman said. If we don't monitor the revival process, he could die after surviving 12,000 years. Jiwon made a decision. Prepare medical equipment. We wake the captain, and then we let him decide what happens next. This is his ship, his mission, his choice. The news spread faster than Jiwon had expected. Within 48 hours of sending their preliminary report to the International Arctic Research Council, satellite phones began ringing constantly. Government officials, military representatives, and scientists from around the world all wanted information about the discovery. 3 new team members arrived by helicopter on a gray morning. Dr. Hyejin Lee was a xenobiologist from Seoul University, brought in specifically to assess any biological contamination risks. She was optimistic and cheerful, constantly talking about the possibilities of first contact with alien life. Samin Han, their new medical officer, was her opposite, cautious and worried about everything that could go wrong. The third arrival was Taejun Baek, who introduced himself as a government liaison. He wore expensive cold-weather gear and carried himself like someone used to giving orders. Daeho didn't trust him immediately, and Jiwon understood why. Taejun never quite answered direct questions about which government agency he represented. You understand that this site will need to be secured soon, Taejun told Jiwon during his first evening at the station. Military forces are already being positioned. You have perhaps 1 week before this becomes an international incident. 1 week to study something that's been here for 12,000 years? Jiwon asked. That's not enough time. Then I suggest you work quickly, Taejun replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yunji had already started drilling the access tunnel. The thermal drill melted through ice steadily, creating a shaft just wide enough for a person to descend. After 4 days of continuous work, they reached the ship's hull. The drill bit stopped making progress. Yunji tried increasing the temperature, but the metal surface refused to melt or even scratch. She pulled up the drill and examined the bit. It was completely worn down, destroyed by contact with the unknown material. Whatever this hull is made of, it's harder than anything we have, she reported. I can't cut through it. We need to find an entrance. Jiwon made a decision. We expand the tunnel sideways. We follow the hull until we find a door or opening. It took 2 more days of careful work, but they finally discovered what looked like a seam in the hull. It was barely visible, a hairline crack that formed a rectangular shape about 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. It could be an airlock, Hyejin suggested, her voice excited even through the radio link. She was up in the station, monitoring from the cameras Yoonji had installed in the tunnel. Yoonji ran her gloved hand along the seam. There's no handle, no obvious way to open it. She pressed against the surface and something incredible happened. The metal under her hand began to glow with a soft blue light. The glow spread outward from her touch point, creating patterns like circuit boards across the door surface. Everyone, did you see that? Yoonji's voice cracked with excitement. It responded to me. Don't touch anything else, Somin warned from above. We don't know what systems you might be activating, but it was too late. The door was already moving. It didn't slide or swing open. Instead, the solid metal seemed to flow apart like liquid, creating an opening where none had existed moments before. Beyond the doorway was darkness, but Yoonji's helmet lamp revealed a corridor inside. I'm going in, Yoonji announced. Wait for backup, Daeho ordered. He was already suiting up to climb down. 20 minutes later, Daeho and Minho had joined Yoonji at the entrance. Jiwon watched from the station through their camera feeds, her heart pounding. Hyejin stood beside her, reading atmospheric sensors. The air inside is breathable, Hyejin reported. Oxygen levels are actually higher than Earth's current atmosphere. About 23% instead of 21%, similar to Earth's atmosphere thousands of years ago. How is that possible? Jiwon asked. The ship has been sealed for 12,000 years. I don't know, but the internal atmosphere is completely stable. No contamination, no decay, no ice penetration. It's like the ship was buried yesterday. The exploration team moved inside carefully. Their lights revealed walls that were smooth and curved, with no visible panels or controls. But as they walked deeper into the ship, lights began activating automatically. Bioluminescent strips along the ceiling glowed softly, providing enough light to see clearly. This technology is incredible, Minho whispered. It's responding to our presence. The ship knows we're here. They moved through corridors and rooms, documenting everything. The interior showed no signs of damage or decay. Everything was pristine, as if the crew had just stepped out for a moment. Then they found the hydroponic bays. Huge rooms filled with planting beds and irrigation systems. And in those beds, dormant but perfectly preserved, were plants. Earth plants, but not varieties that existed in modern times. Hyejin studied the samples through her portable microscope. These are ancient species. This one looks like a predecessor to modern wheat, but it went extinct around 10,000 years ago. And this one, I don't even recognize it. It might be from before the Ice Age. Why would an alien ship have Earth plants? Yoonji asked. Nobody had an answer. They continued deeper into the vessel, finding more mysteries. Storage rooms filled with sealed containers. Laboratories with equipment they couldn't identify. Living quarters designed for humanoid occupants. And then they found the cargo hold. It was massive, taking up nearly a quarter of the ship's total volume. And inside were rows upon rows of cylindrical pods, each about 2 meters tall. Minho approached one pod carefully. Its surface was transparent, revealing what was inside. It's a DNA storage system, he said, reading the symbols that glowed on the pod's display. The symbols weren't in any language he knew, but somehow their meaning was clear. Jiwon, watching through the cameras, felt her breath catch. How many pods are there? Hundreds, Daeho reported, scanning his light across the vast room. Maybe thousands, each one labeled with different species names. Yoonji found the central control panel. When she touched it, a holographic display activated, showing a catalog of everything stored in the cargo hold. The list was enormous. Every plant species from ancient Earth, every animal, every insect, a complete genetic library of life from 12,000 years ago. This is an ark, Hyejin whispered through the radio. Someone was preserving Earth's biodiversity. But who? Jiwon asked. And why? Minho had moved to another section of the cargo hold. He stood in front of a different type of pod, his body language suggesting shock. Jiwon, you need to see this. The camera feed showed what Minho was looking at. These pods were different, larger, and the labels weren't in alien symbols. They were in Hangul, Korean writing. Ancient Korean writing, but readable. These aren't just DNA samples, Minho said quietly. These are people. Human genetic material. Complete genome sequences with names and biographical data. And the names. They're all Korean. All East Asian. Ji-won felt the world shift beneath her feet. This wasn't an alien ship, or rather it was and it wasn't. Someone had come to Earth 12,000 years ago. Someone had preserved Earth's genetic heritage, and that someone had been human. Find the ship's computer, Ji-won ordered. Find the logs. We need to know who built this ship and why they came here. As the exploration team searched for the main computer core, alarms suddenly blared through the research station. Taejun was at the communications panel, his face pale. We have incoming aircraft, he announced. Military helicopters. Multiple nations. They're coming to secure the site. Ji-won looked at the camera feeds showing her team inside the ancient ship. They were so close to understanding. So close to learning the truth about humanity's past. How long do we have? She asked. Maybe 6 hours, Taejun replied. Maybe less. 6 hours to uncover a mystery that had waited 12,000 years. Ji-won grabbed her cold weather gear. I'm going down there. We don't have time to waste. The wind howled across the frozen wasteland of northern Greenland, carrying sheets of snow that made it nearly impossible to see more than a few meters ahead. Inside the heated research station, Dr. Ji-won Park stared at her computer screen with growing confusion. The radar readings made no sense. She had been studying ice layers for 15 years, mapping the geological history frozen beneath the Arctic ice sheet. Her team used ground-penetrating radar to look deep into the ice, searching for clues about Earth's ancient climate. But this morning, the equipment had detected something that shouldn't exist. Minho, come look at this, Ji-won called out to her colleague. Dr. Minho Kim walked over, holding a cup of instant coffee. He was younger than Ji-won, still excited by every new discovery. His enthusiasm sometimes annoyed the more careful researchers, but Ji-won appreciated his energy. What did you find? Minho asked, leaning over her shoulder. There's something down there, 800 meters deep in the ice. The radar is showing a massive metal structure. Ji-won pointed at the screen. Look at the size of it. Nearly 2 kilometers long. Minho's eyes widened. A plane? Maybe something from the Cold War? There were military flights over this region back then. That was my first thought too, Ji-won admitted. But the shape is wrong. And the metal composition doesn't match anything in our database. When I ran the spectral analysis, the computer couldn't identify the alloy. She pulled up another screen showing chemical signatures. The readings were unlike anything from known metal sources. No iron, no aluminum, no titanium. Whatever was buried in the ice was made from materials that didn't exist in any periodic table. Yoonji Choi, the team's engineer, entered the room carrying equipment cases. She was the youngest member of the research team, but she had already saved their expedition twice by fixing broken machinery with whatever spare parts she could find. Did someone say metal? Yoonji asked. Are we finally finding something interesting instead of ice samples? Ji-won smiled despite her confusion. Possibly. We need to drill down and get a physical sample. Can you set up a borehole at these coordinates? Yoonji studied the screen. 800 meters? That'll take at least 3 days with our equipment. But yes, I can do it. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. The drilling rig worked around the clock, punching through ancient ice. Dae-ho Yoon, their security officer, stood watch during the night shifts. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke about his military background, but everyone felt safer knowing he was there. When the drill finally reached the target depth, Yoonji pulled up the core sample. The team gathered around the table as she carefully extracted it from the storage tube. At the bottom of the ice core, embedded in the frozen water, was a small piece of metal. Ji-won picked it up with tweezers. The metal was dark gray, almost black, with a smooth surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She held it under the microscope and gasped. This isn't natural, she said quietly. Look at the structure. It's manufactured, precision engineered at a molecular level. Minho ran his fingers through his hair, a nervous habit. So it is a crashed plane. Maybe experimental technology. No plane is 2 kilometers long, Minho, Yoonji pointed out. We need to see more of it. Can we expand the radar survey? Over the next week, they mapped the entire structure. What they discovered made everyone in the station stop their other work. The object buried in the ice wasn't just large. It was enormous. Its shape was smooth and curved like a teardrop or a seed. There were no visible seams or joints anywhere on the surface. It looked like it had been poured from a single piece of metal. "We need to report this," Diho said during a team meeting. "This is beyond our mission scope." "If we report it now, the military will take over," Minho argued. "We'll never see it again. They'll classify everything, and we'll spend the rest of our lives signing non-disclosure agreements." Jiwan understood both perspectives, but her scientific curiosity won. "One more test. Let's date the ice around it. That will tell us how long it's been down there." The carbon dating results arrived 3 days later. Jiwan read them 3 times before calling the team together. Her hands were shaking. "The ice surrounding the structure is approximately 12,000 years old," she announced. Silence filled the room. 12,000 years. That meant the object had been buried since the end of the last ice age, when humans were still living in small tribes and had barely invented agriculture. "That's impossible," Minho whispered. "Humans couldn't build anything like this 12,000 years ago. We were barely making stone tools." "Exactly," Jiwan said. "Which means humans didn't build it." The implications hung in the air like a storm cloud. They had found something from another world, something that had been waiting beneath the ice for longer than recorded human history. Yunji broke the silence. "We have to get inside. We need to see what's in there." "How?" Daeho asked. "We can't excavate 2 kilometers of spacecraft with our equipment. It would take years." "We don't excavate it," Yunji said, her mind already working through the problem. "We drill a narrow access tunnel, just wide enough for a person to climb down. We make a small hole and see if there's a way inside." Jiwan thought about it. It was risky. It might damage the structure. But Yunji was right. If they waited and reported their findings, government agencies would seal off the site. This might be their only chance to see what humanity's ancestors, or visitors from beyond Earth, had left behind. "Do it," Jiwan decided. "But carefully. We document everything, every step of the way." As Yunji began planning the drilling operation, Minho pulled Jiwan aside. "What do you think is inside?" he asked. Jiwan looked out the window at the endless ice. Somewhere beneath their feet, buried under hundreds of meters of frozen water, lay something that had traveled across space and time, something that had chosen Earth as its destination 12,000 years ago. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think we're about to find out why someone came here, right when human civilization was just beginning." That night, strange readings began appearing on their monitoring equipment. Low-frequency energy pulses emanated from the buried structure, so faint they could barely be detected. It was as if the ship knew they had found it. As if, after 12,000 years of waiting, it was finally waking up.